The sound of my daughter's skull hitting the pavement still echoes in my head. One moment, she was laughing, watering the small patch of flowers outside our porch, the only thing that made her smile since her therapy began. The next, HOA, Karen was screaming, waving her clipboard, accusing her of trespassing on community property. Before I could reach them, Karen shoved her hard, too hard. My little girl's head struck the iron gate with a sickening thud. She went silent. Her watering can rolled away, water spilling across the concrete like tears. The neighbors froze. Karen gasped, muttering, "It was an accident," but the blood running down my daughter's forehead said otherwise. I remember dropping to my knees, shaking her tiny hand, screaming her name as sirens blared in the distance. That's the moment everything changed, and Karen's life was about to unravel forever. Before I start this story, I want to ask you something. Which city are you watching this video from? Comment your city name below, because this story could happen anywhere, in your own neighborhood, behind the gates of a so-called perfect community. And before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss what happens when truth meets power and justice finds its way home. Now, let's begin. That day started like any other in Willow Creek Estates. The sun was warm. My daughter Lily was watering the small garden she planted after months of physical therapy. She had fought so hard to walk again after her accident years ago. Every tiny step she took was a victory, and every flower she planted was a symbol of hope. But our neighborhood had a villain disguised as a community leader. Her name was Karen Whitfield, the president of our HOA. A woman who smiled in public meetings, but ruled the block like a dictator. She fined people for leaving trash cans out too long, threatened families over lawn colors, and treated children like criminals for simply playing outside. That morning, when she spotted Lily outside our property line by just a few inches, she didn't see a child. She saw a violation. And that mistake changed everything. It was a Saturday morning, calm, quiet, and perfect. Birds chirped, sprinklers clicked, and the air smelled faintly of cut grass. My daughter, Lily, was wearing her favorite yellow sundress, the one with tiny blue flowers. Her hair was tied back in two little braids as she watered the tulips she'd planted just 2 weeks ago. The garden wasn't much, just a few flower beds at the edge of our property, but to her, it was a world she had built with her own hands. I stood by the window, smiling. Seeing her out there, moving freely again, always filled me with gratitude. The doctors had once told us she might never walk properly, but there she was, careful, gentle, determined, proving them all wrong. Then came the sound that shattered that peaceful morning, the sharp click of heels, and that shrill, condescending voice that every resident of Willow Creek dreaded. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing there?" Karen Whitfield, mid-50s, always in her pressed blue blazer, clutching her HOA clipboard like it was a weapon. She was the type of woman who thought authority meant cruelty. The moment I saw her marching toward my daughter, I felt that familiar chill in my gut. Lily froze, her small hands gripping the watering can. "I'm just watering my flowers, ma'am," she said softly, polite as ever. Karen scoffed, "Your flowers? This patch is community land. I've told your father before, no personal gardening beyond the property markers." "That's not true," I said, stepping outside. "Those flowers are well within our boundary, Karen. You can check the HOA map yourself." But Karen ignored me completely. She leaned down toward Lily, her face twisted with anger. "You people think rules don't apply to you, huh? Maybe if your father read the HOA manual instead of—" "Karen," I warned, my voice low, "back away." But she didn't. She took one step closer to Lily, too close, and yanked the small, welcome sign my daughter had placed in the soil. The stake snapped in her hand. Lily gasped, tears welling up. "That's mine," she cried, reaching forward. And that's when it happened. Karen shoved her hand out in anger, a sharp, careless motion, meant to push the little girl back. But Lily wasn't steady on her feet. Her balance had always been fragile since therapy. The push sent her stumbling. It was only a single second, but I'll never forget the sound. Thud. The back of her head hit the iron gate post. Her body went limp, collapsing beside the garden. "Lily!" I screamed, sprinting forward. My knees hit the concrete as I cradled her tiny body. Blood was already trickling from the back of her head. Her eyes flickered, then rolled back. Karen froze. Her face went pale, clipboard trembling in her hand. "I didn't mean it was just, she came at me," she stammered. "Call an ambulance." I roared, "Now!" But Karen didn't move. She just stood there, horror mixed with fear of consequence. It was a neighbor, Mrs. Thompson from across the street, who grabbed her phone and called 911. I remember pressing my hand against the wound, whispering, "Stay with me, sweetheart. Please stay with me." Her pulse was faint, her breathing shallow. The sirens came fast, flashing red lights reflecting off every polished car and mailbox in the neighborhood. The paramedics lifted her onto the stretcher, shouting vitals, while I followed in the back of the ambulance, gripping her tiny hand. As the doors shut, I looked back through the glass. Karen stood frozen on the curb. Her pristine blue blazer, now spotted with blood from the shove, she swore was just an accident. But deep down, I knew it wasn't an accident. It was anger, and that anger almost took my daughter's life. The ambulance tore through the streets, sirens wailing, lights blinding the morning calm. I sat inside, clutching my daughter's cold hand. Her tiny fingers twitched once, then went still again. "Stay with me, Lily. Please," I whispered, my voice trembling. The paramedic beside me checked her pulse, frowned, and shouted to the driver, "Increase speed now." I could barely breathe. My ears rang. My mind screamed the same words over and over. "She's just a child, she's just a child." We burst through the emergency doors at St. Mary's Medical Center. Doctors and nurses rushed toward the stretcher, their faces blurring into streaks of blue and white. Someone grabbed my shoulder. "Sir, we need you to stay outside." The doors swung shut. That sound, the click of metal closing, felt like my heart being locked away. I was left in the hallway, helpless, watching strangers fight for my daughter's life. Minutes felt like hours. I could still see the image replaying: Karen's shove, the fall, the blood. Every detail burned into my memory like a brand. My fists clenched so hard they trembled. Part of me wanted to go back, to confront her, to make her feel the same pain. But the other part, the father in me, just wanted Lily to wake up. After what felt like forever, the doctor stepped out. His scrubs were stained, his face tense. "Mr. Parker?" I stood immediately. "Yes, how is she?" He sighed, looking down at his clipboard before meeting my eyes. "She suffered a severe concussion and internal bleeding in her brain. We managed to stabilize her, but she's in a coma. We've moved her to ICU for observation." A coma. The word echoed like thunder. My knees gave out, and I sat on the cold tile floor. She was just watering flowers," I whispered. "How could this happen?" The doctor crouched beside me. "Her brain is swelling. We'll do everything we can, but the next 24 hours are critical." I nodded numbly, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. When I was allowed inside, the sight of her broke me completely. My little girl lay motionless, tubes running from her nose and arms. Machines beeped softly beside her. Each sound reminded me she was still here, but barely. I held her hand and whispered, "Daddy's here. I promise, no one will hurt you again." Then I saw it. Her watering can, someone had placed it on the table beside her bed. The nurses must have found it in the ambulance. The sight of it shattered me all over again. That innocent little thing was now a symbol of cruelty. Hours passed. Friends came. Neighbors visited. Some cried. But one person didn't come: Karen. Not even a call. Not even an apology. Instead, her lawyer did. A tall man in a gray suit entered the waiting room that evening, holding a folder. "Mr. Parker," he began coldly, "Ms. Whitfield wants to express her concern about the unfortunate accident." I cut him off. "Accident?" She shoved my daughter into an iron gate. He adjusted his glasses. "According to Ms. Whitfield, your daughter lunged at her first. Several HOA members witnessed the event. My jaw dropped. She's lying. He shrugged. My client insists it was self-defense. We've also filed a preliminary incident report with the HOA board to prevent defamation against her name. My blood boiled. You're threatening me? While my daughter's fighting for her life? Mr. Parker, he said flatly, we're simply protecting Ms. Whitfield's reputation. Then he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there shaking. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by Lily's bed, listening to the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. Every sound was a countdown of my rage. She was lying, and I'd prove it. I'd find the truth. Because the moment Karen shoved my daughter, she didn't just break the HOA rules. She broke me. And when a father breaks, he doesn't cry. He fights. The next morning, I arrived at the police station with barely an hour of sleep and a storm inside me. The smell of antiseptic from the ICU still clung to my clothes. My daughter was in a coma, tubes, bandages, and machines doing what her body couldn't. And somewhere out there, the woman who put her there was sipping coffee like nothing happened. Detective Alvarez met me in the hallway. He was a calm man with tired eyes, someone who'd seen too many tragedies to be shocked by anything anymore. But when I showed him the photos I'd taken of the blood on the gate and the shattered welcome sign, his face hardened. She said, "Your daughter attacked her," he asked, flipping through his notes. "She's lying," I said, my voice cracking. "Karen shoved her. I saw it." He nodded slowly. "We've already spoken to a few witnesses. Most of them heard the shouting, but didn't see the actual shove. However," he paused, "there might be something else. The HOA installed new security cameras near the front entrance 2 months ago. If they were online that morning, they might have caught the incident." That was my first glimmer of hope. "Then check them," I said. "Please." He sighed. "We'll need HOA permission to access the footage." And just like that, the hope dimmed. Because Karen was the HOA president. When I returned home, the neighborhood had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't peace but fear. Curtains shifted when I walked by. No one spoke. Everyone knew something terrible had happened, but no one wanted to pick a side. By evening, a letter had already arrived on my doorstep. HOA violation notice. Karen had actually fined me for creating disturbance and emotional distress within the community. My hands trembled as I read it. My daughter was fighting for her life, and she was fining me? That night, I went to see Mrs. Thompson, the elderly neighbor who had called 911. She opened the door slowly, her eyes red. "I'm so sorry, Jacob," she whispered. "I saw what she did. I told the police too. But Karen's already talking to the board. She's saying you're trying to frame her." I clenched my jaw. "Do you have any proof?" Mrs. Thompson looked down, hesitated, then said, "Maybe." She led me inside and turned on her home's security system monitor. "My son installed a doorbell cam that faces your garden. It might have caught something." She played the footage. The timestamp showed that morning, the same moment my daughter was outside. I saw Karen's figure storm across the yard. The argument, the hand movement, then the push, clear as day. My heart stopped. I leaned forward. "Can you email me that clip?" She nodded. "Already sent it to the police, too." The next day, I returned to the station with the footage. Detective Alvarez watched silently as the video played. When it ended, he looked at me, this time with something sharper in his eyes. "That's assault," he said quietly. Relief and fury collided in my chest. "Then arrest her." He nodded. "We'll get the paperwork ready. But you should be prepared, she's connected. She'll fight back." Oh, she did. Within hours of the police report being filed, Karen went on a full-blown public defense. She called an emergency HOA meeting that evening, standing in front of the entire community with tears in her eyes, pretending to be the victim. "She came at me," she sobbed dramatically. "I tried to defend myself. I love that little girl. I would never hurt her. But her father has been targeting me ever since I enforced the rules fairly." I watched from the back, trembling. She was rewriting reality right in front of everyone, but she didn't know the video existed yet. When the detective walked in halfway through her speech, the room went silent. He whispered something to another officer, and then both approached her. "Ms. Whitfield," Alvarez said firmly, "we need you to come with us." Her face went pale. "What? What's going on?" He held up his phone, playing the footage. Gasps filled the hall. The sound of her shove, the sight of my daughter falling, it silenced everyone. Karen's fake tears vanished. "That's edited," she screamed. "That's not real." But the evidence spoke louder than her lies. As they led her away in handcuffs, I felt something shift in the room. Neighbors who once looked away now stared at her in disgust. Mrs. Thompson hugged me tightly. "Justice is coming, Jacob," she whispered. But as I looked at the police car's flashing lights, I couldn't feel peace. Not yet, because my daughter was still in the ICU, still unconscious, and no amount of justice could undo the damage Karen had done. The day Karen was arrested, the entire neighborhood buzzed with whispers. Some neighbors avoided eye contact, others texted me secretly, "We're with you," but none of it mattered. My world was still frozen in that cold ICU room, where the rhythmic beeping of machines was the only sign my daughter was still fighting. I visited her every morning and every night, reading her favorite stories, praying she'd just squeeze my hand. Every day, the same silence. But something in me changed. Grief was slowly hardening into determination. One evening, Detective Alvarez called. "Mr. Parker," he said, "you might want to come in. There's more to this than you think." When I arrived, he had files spread across his desk, HOA reports, legal complaints, and photos. We ran a background check on Karen Whitfield. He began, and it turns out, this isn't her first violent outburst. He handed me a document. My eyes widened. 3 years ago, in another community, Riverside Meadows, she was sued for assaulting a neighbor's teenager. She paid them off to drop the charges and moved here right after. I clenched my fists. She just kept doing it. Alvarez nodded grimly. "And that's not all. We found something about your HOA, finances. Karen's been using community funds to pay for her personal expenses, renovations, spa bills, even her car maintenance." I blinked. "You're saying she's been stealing?" "Exactly. And the moment your daughter started planting flowers near the fence line, Karen panicked. That area hides a buried cable line, one that connects to her illegal surveillance cameras." I froze. "Wait, she was spying on residents?" "Looks that way. We found her private cloud account linked to those cameras. The footage you brought us? It wasn't even the only one. There's another angle from her own hidden camera." He pressed play on the screen. There was again the same scene, but this time from Karen's perspective. You could clearly hear her voice dripping with contempt. "Stupid little brat. Let's see how much you smile when your flowers are gone." Then the shove, the sound of Lily's head hitting metal, and the silence that followed. I covered my mouth, trembling. Alvarez paused the video. "She recorded her own crime," he said softly. "She's finished." My hand shook. "Can I have a copy of that?" He nodded. "We'll submit it to the DA. But I think the press will get wind of this soon." By the next day, they did. Headlines exploded across every local network. HOA president arrested for assaulting child. Evidence shows abuse of power. Reporters crowded the street. Camera vans lined up outside Willow Creek Estates. And for the first time, people weren't afraid to speak. Residents came forward with stories. How Karen had bullied them, threatened fines, humiliated families in meetings. The facade of the perfect HOA collapsed overnight. But even amid that chaos, my focus stayed in the ICU. Every day, I whispered to Lily, "You did nothing wrong. Daddy's fixing it. I promise." Then, one morning, as sunlight crept through the blinds, her fingers moved. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but then her eyelids fluttered, her lips trembled. The heart monitor's rhythm changed. "Lily?" I gasped, standing up. "Sweetheart, can you hear me?" She made a faint sound, barely audible, but it was hers. I pressed the call button. Nurses rushed in. The doctor smiled. "She's responding. It's a good sign." I couldn't stop crying. My little girl was coming back. That evening, Alvarez visited the hospital. He placed his hat on his chest. "She's strong. Like her father, he said with a small smile. Then he handed me a sealed envelope. Karen's trial date has been set, and there's something else you should see. Inside was a signed statement, Karen's confession. I didn't mean to hurt her, but I was angry. They all defied me. I lost control. I wanted to scare her, not hurt her. Reading those words made my blood boil, but it also brought a strange peace. Because now, she couldn't hide behind lawyers, fake tears, or lies. For the first time in months, I looked out the hospital window and saw a sunrise that didn't feel heavy. Justice was finally catching up. But deep down, I knew the reckoning wasn't over yet. The court might punish Karen, but I needed something more. I needed her to feel what she did, and that moment of reckoning was coming soon. By the time Karen's trial was announced, the entire county knew her name, not as the self-proclaimed protector of community standards, but as the woman who had put a disabled child in a coma. News vans still parked outside our gated neighborhood, and every time I drove past the gate where Lily fell, my chest tightened. The bloodstains were gone, but the memory never left. Lily was recovering slowly. She could open her eyes now, smile faintly, even whisper a few words, but her right hand still trembled and her speech was slurred. The doctors called it post-traumatic neurological shock. I called it proof of what that woman had done. Still, the system moved slowly. Karen posted bail within 2 days, and even though she'd been fired from her HOA position, she walked around like she owned the air she breathed, smiling, pretending to be the victim. That's when I realized justice in court wasn't enough. She needed to lose the very thing she worshipped, her power, her reputation, her control. And I knew exactly how to do it. I started by gathering everything I had. The HOA financial records Detective Alvarez shared, her illegal surveillance files, the confession she wrote, and every recorded testimony from residents she'd bullied over the years. I spent nights compiling them into a single digital file. Then I uploaded it anonymously to a local journalist's Dropbox, one who had already covered the story. The subject line was simple: "You only know half of what Karen did." Within 48 hours, it hit every news outlet in the state. Exposed. HOA president embezzled funds, spied on neighbors. New footage shows her mocking injured child. The public turned savage. Social media exploded. People flooded the HOA's page with fury, thousands of comments, angry emojis, threats of lawsuits. Sponsors withdrew from the gated community's marketing campaigns. Home values dropped. The board dissolved. Karen's name was everywhere, but not the way she wanted. A week later, she showed up at the hospital. Security called me to the lobby. She stood there, pale, shaking, without her polished blazer. Her hair was messy, her eyes bloodshot. "Jacob," she whispered, "please, I just want to talk." I didn't say a word, just crossed my arms. "I lost everything," she said. "My job, my house, my husband left. I never wanted this. It was a mistake. A mistake." I cut her off, my voice low and sharp. "You shoved a disabled child. You lied. You tried to destroy me. Now you want pity?" Her lips trembled. I didn't know she was. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." For a moment, her mask slipped, the arrogance, the superiority gone. All that was left was fear. I said, stepping closer, "I used to believe in karma. Now I've seen it." She started to cry, the ugly kind of crying that comes when someone realizes their life is over. And then my daughter's voice cut through the silence. Weak, but steady. "Dad." I turned. Lily was there, in her wheelchair, a nurse behind her. She looked straight at Karen. "Why'd you hurt me?" Karen's knees buckled. She covered her mouth, sobbing. "I didn't mean to." But Lily's next words silenced her. "God saw you." The nurse wheeled her away, leaving Karen shaking like a ghost. That night, I stood in Lily's room, watching her sleep peacefully for the first time in months. Her small hand rested on a stuffed rabbit, and her monitors blinked steady green lines. I pulled out my phone and opened the news again. Karen's mugshot filled the screen. A fresh headline scrolled below it. "Former HOA president found guilty, faces up to 7 years in prison. Justice. Finally. But it wasn't just the courts that punished her, it was life itself. The woman who once terrified an entire community now sat alone in a cell, stripped of everything she'd used to feel powerful. I turned off my phone and whispered to my sleeping daughter, "You did it, sweetheart. You survived her." Then I looked out the window. The same moonlight that once shone on Karen's perfect lawn now glowed over the hospital parking lot, soft, pure, forgiving. And for the first time since that terrible morning, I felt peace. Because sometimes revenge isn't fire. It's silence. It's watching the world balance itself, one truth at a time. Months passed. The seasons changed, but the scar on my daughter's head and the memories in my mind never faded. The trial was over, Karen was sentenced, and the cameras that once flooded our street had long gone. Yet every time I passed that garden, I could still hear it, the faint sound of Lily's laugh before everything went wrong. But life, it has a strange way of healing what anger cannot. Lily was getting better, slower than the doctors hoped, but stronger than anyone expected. She learned to walk again with therapy, her steps wobbly but full of courage. Sometimes she'd pause and smile at me mid-walk, whispering, "See, Daddy, I'm not broken." Those words tore me apart and stitched me back together at the same time. We decided to rebuild the little garden, not because we needed flowers, but because that spot deserved to bloom again. Together, we planted marigolds, tulips, and a single rose bush, the same type Karen once destroyed. As Lily placed the final seed, she looked up and asked, "Can we name it?" I smiled. "What do you want to call it?" She thought for a second. "Hope." And that's exactly what it became. The Garden of Hope. Neighbors began to visit again. Families brought food, kids left cards, and one by one, people opened up about how Karen had made their lives miserable too. Some even cried, saying they'd been too afraid to speak up. "It's okay," I told them. "She doesn't control anyone anymore." One evening, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No return address. Inside was a short-handwritten note. "You were right. Power doesn't make someone strong. Truth does. I'm sorry. KW." I stared at it for a long time. Maybe it was Karen's way of seeking forgiveness, or maybe it was just guilt echoing through prison walls. Either way, I didn't respond. Some apologies don't need words. They just need silence. A few weeks later, the local news aired one final segment about the case. The anchor spoke softly. "The tragic incident at Willow Creek has led to new HOA reform laws being discussed across the state, focusing on accountability and resident safety." One small garden started the conversation. I looked at Lily sitting beside me, smiling as she watched the flowers on TV. "See, Daddy," she said proudly. "Our garden's famous now." I laughed through tears. "Yeah, sweetheart. It's famous for the right reason." That night, as I tucked her into bed, she whispered, "Do you think Karen will ever be happy again?" I paused. "Maybe someday, if she learns what real happiness means." "Like flowers." "Exactly like flowers." She smiled faintly and closed her eyes. I stood there for a while, watching her breathe, realizing that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. Outside, a gentle breeze rustled the petals of our new garden. The moonlight danced across the leaves, and for the first time, the gate that once symbolized pain now looked peaceful. Sometimes, the strongest revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about living so beautifully that their cruelty loses its power over you. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes kindness can heal pain. Speech Balloon, tell me in the comments, what would you have done if this happened to your child? And before you go, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more true stories where justice finds its voice. Because every story deserves to be heard. Every wound deserves to heal. And every Karen out there needs to remember, the truth always wins, no matter how long it takes.